much fun was that? Is this the first time for anybody here seeing this film? Okay, maybe half. So the rest of you have seen it perhaps as many times as I have. 2, 3, maybe this might have been my 4th, actually. Not just because of Glenn Powell, by the way. Don't listen to my husband. Let me introduce myself. I'm Colette Kennedy, and I am a meteorologist. I know we've got some girls in STEM here, so I'm really thrilled about that. I work at the CBC just a few blocks away, but I also grew up in Kansas, and I started my career in Tornado Alley, so I have that, but I'm also a fan of film and a student of film. So for so many reasons, I'm so excited to be here with you all tonight with TIFF and the Sloan Science on film showcase here. So thanks for coming. Joining me on stage is going to be Dr. Gregory Kopp here, and he's with the Storm Impact WX Chair in Severe Storms Engineering. And joining us, which is so exciting as well, we have director and filmmaker Lee Isaac Chung with us virtually, as well as Kevin Kelleher. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. And Kevin is technical and tornado consultant, not only on Twisters, but a little while ago, about 30 years, I guess, as well on the original Twister film. So, yes, some of us remember that well, too. I want to get to our panel and to our questions because we don't have a ton of time, and I have so many questions. I'm going to start with you, Isaac. Is it okay if I call you by your nickname, Isaac?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay,
because tonight we're looking at the craft and the art of this, but also the science. I'm going to start with a bit of more about the craft. And in fact, beginning, Isaac, just in the sense with when this script came to you, the script by Mark L. Smith, what about it was appealing? Had you seen the original Twister? I mean, it's a sequel. It's a natural disaster film. I guess Spielberg must have already been attached, so maybe that was a bit exciting. But what was it that made you want to make this film?
There were a lot of things. I grew up in Arkansas, and Twisters was very big where I grew up. I grew up right along the Oklahoma border. So I remember when that movie came out, it felt like a big action adventure set in a part of the country that I really knew. And I had long been saying that we need another Twister. And I was saying that to a lot of people. And then someone actually said, someone's trying to make the next Twisters. And at that point, I didn't think, I could ever get attached to that or make that. But lo and behold, the producers at Kennedy Marshall sent me the script, even without hearing that I already had interest in that project. So it just felt like stars were aligning. Mm-hmm. And when I read the script, I just thought it was a lot of fun. I think it was the moment when Tyler drives the truck into the tornado and shoots up a bunch of fireworks. I was kind of hooked. I'm embarrassed to say that is the moment that made me want to make the movie, but here we are.
Oh, I love it. That's an awesome answer. And maybe, okay, because we're talking about shooting fireworks up a tornado, maybe let's get into some of the science of what's realistic here. Kevin, I'll come to you, and I'm going to ask you a bit about, because you were on both films, and at the beginning of this film, we see Dorothy once again. And so I'm going to ask you about, sending these sensors up, and then I'm going to kind of split that up with the polymers and the idea of choking a tornado, and I'm going to give that to Greg. But can you talk to us about how realistic is that to be able to send this information up or to chart it from the outside like we might a missile to try and get more information about tornadoes?
Yeah, so in the first movie, the Hollywood stretch was the sensors. We had actually built a 55-gallon drum and put it in the path of a tornado with one instrument set inside and of course the wind anemometers on the outside. And that's what prompted the writer, Michael Crichton, to write, and his wife, Anne Marie Martin, to write Twister. So they came to our lab and wanted to see what we really do. And that's kind of how that all got started. But we weren't able to get the technology into those small balls. We didn't have the technology back in the mid 90s and early 90s, or when we did it was the early 80s, mid 80s. So that was the stretch there. And then, of course, now the stretch is the chemicals affecting and diminishing the tornado. A little bit more of a stretch. The principle is there, but if Greg's going to ask a question about the chemicals, we can hold that off.
Okay, yes, we're giving this to you. Why can't we, choke a tornado, so to speak, with these polymers that, diaper material or absorbent material and get that cold pool and make changes to all that energy? Why not?
Well, I think, just not even talking about the chemistry, it's, I think, really hard to get stuff into the tornado. Just getting instrumentation in to make measurements is really, really hard. I'm not sure about the volumes you would need as well, and so just doing those kind of things, I think would be really challenging, and I have doubts about that. I did like how the research was portrayed, though, the passion of the researchers trying to make a difference, trying things. And my experience as a researcher is most stuff doesn't work, and we keep trying and we keep working on that. And I think the film portrayed that pretty well. The compression of the adjustments that they made from one tornado to the next, that's not realistic. In real life, that's years of work. But I love the aspiration of it and trying to make a difference in society, because that's what we're all trying to do.
Yeah, and let me come back to you, Isaac. I mean, you do such a great job in this film making us think, well, we can just get up close to a tornado and put fireworks and send them up it, or these things, and and we're going to survive that. So it's what makes the film so exciting. I mean, we understand we have to suspend our disbelief there, but how do you know what an audience can accept and what's going to make sense in the storytelling and what will not? And this is where we're kind of bringing the science in with the craft. There's a lot of science in this film. Every time I see it, I realize, because it's my field, I don't get it at the beginning because I know these things, but the more you teach a lot, and yet there are other things that you don't feel the need. Like you explain cap, but we don't explain cape, but you don't need to. How as a filmmaker do you figure out what has to get explained to your audience and what they can Google later?
That's a really great question. I was trying to approach it the way that I was learning about it on the fly a little bit, like the things that I felt were important to the story and to the script, and researching with Kevin, talking to him about the various things that we could talk about, the scientific elements that need to make the plot move forward. In that case, cap did become important. And there's a lot of wish fulfillment within the film. Driving up to a tornado that close is not something anyone should do. But when we're watching movies give us a chance to really be immersed in things that normally we don't have a chance to be immersed in. So I knew that on that element, if someone's watching this movie on a big screen, they could really have quite an experience with Mother Nature. And I felt like that first film did such a great job of inspiring a lot of future scientists. A lot of people went into meteorology because of that film. Mm-hmm. I wondered, is there a way we could make the act of doing science feel like an adventure? Like the act of scientific research and innovation and the goals that we have, can we make that feel like an adventurous thing in a way that kind of inspires people? So the fears I have, honestly, is that this movie would lead to more clogged roads during tornado season and people doing crazy things. So I have a bit of concern and worries about that. Trust me, but I was hoping that this film could balance it with some greater work for the scientific community.
Yeah, I feel like you achieved that goal. So bravo.
Oh, thank you.
Kevin, let me ask you, as a scientist and you're consulting, so, it's your job to kind of give the science, and then I suppose just let the filmmakers, make the film. But do you take some heat maybe from some of your severe weather colleagues? I'm thinking, specifically having worked in Kansas, we put a lot into making sure people are aware of what's happening and our warning systems, and they're actually pretty amazing. But there's sort of the idea that, these tornadoes came out of nowhere. So balancing that with, how do you feel, or what kind of feedback do you get? How do you work with that?
Yes, that was something that Isaac, we would talk about injecting science in different spots, and then what the outcome, how it would be perceived by those folks who really know what's going on. As growing up or being from Kansas in Oklahoma, this is a very educated population out here about severe weather. It's like they're all have some minor degree in meteorology. I mean, they know lingo, they know what it means, they know what it. So you have to. So I would be thinking about that when we were making the movie, and explaining how it might be perceived. The opening scene when they run under the bridge, we learned from May 3rd, 1999 outbreak that is really not what you want to do. And I think Greg knows the Bernoulli effect and how winds accelerate around fixed structures like buildings and so on. So we had specific cases of people being ripped out. So the learning point there was it didn't end well. Okay. Another example is at the end of the movie. What really, and I kept telling Isaac, this is my get out of jail free card. Please have the explosion at the end, because then you can say, and then Javi did at the very end, well, it could have been, the explosion and the heat plume that dissipated the tornado, or it could have been the chemicals. We don't know. And so that was, that kind of helped in that instance. So those are some examples of where Isaac worked really well. He was just so interested in getting the science right, and the first movie as well. But there's a lot more science in this movie than the first movie, and that's because Isaac was so receptive to ideas and inserting things.
Great. Yeah. Let's now come back to you, Greg, here. I mean, in terms of this idea, Kate, our protagonist, she's trying to mitigate that, destruction from tornadoes. So in your research, what maybe a little more realistically, what kind of strides are we making?
Well, what we can control, I think, more easily is what we build. And our houses we can actually do quite a lot. In Canada, we have great building codes. We have heavy snow loads, which makes our roofs actually really strong. And what we need to do is hold the roof down. And there's technology for that, hurricane straps. And 95% of tornadoes are EF2 or less, and we can mitigate the damage from that with really inexpensive technology that already exists. We just have to get it into the houses. And so that's, I think, one of the key takeaways is we can learn. We learn from the damage from the storms. We see that. And one of the things I really liked in the movie was there was a house with the roof went flying off, and it was really realistic in terms of how that failure happened. And so I was really impressed with that. And that's the kind of damage we can actually mitigate that when it's EF2 or less.
Okay, you mentioned something, how realistic. And so, Isaac, I'm going to come back to you now. In terms of how realistic everything seems, I understand you shot this on 35 millimeter film. And so in the natural world, I feel like that makes things seem even more real, even more the way that they are in nature. But then you're taking that and marrying that up with special effects and weaving these together to make this, seamless looking film. How do you, with that process, which much of it must take place in a studio or at least indoors, plus being out in the natural world, how do you put that all together?
Well, I suppose we tried to be outside as much as possible, just because that would make us honest. That would keep us within the limitations of the real world. So that was important, and I had an incredible special effects artist named Scott Fisher, who works a lot with Christopher Nolan, who, is really well known for not doing many VFX shots. Scott came in and rigged a lot of things that would be the effects of the tornado, like dust or actual very high-speed winds, trees that are falling through windows, vehicles that are falling, things like that. And those effects, because they were real, that really helped sell the illusion. And then ILM itself, Industrial Light and Magic, who handled our VFX, they went the next level with this film. They worked on the original Twister, and what they said to me was that all of the data from that first movie for the tornadoes that they built might have just created like 5 seconds worth of data for us, just by the sheer amount of physics that they're putting into the actual storms and destruction. So they were really going down to the level of the moisture in the air when it comes to trying to get it right and real. And we did a lot of research on YouTube. YouTube ends up being a really good way to research tornadoes and tornado damage, just because now much more of that has been documented, and much more is out there. So since the very first Twister, there's a lot more out there that we can study. So we were just able to look at different clips and compare and figure out, what do different tornadoes do? What does damage look like? There was a tornado in Kansas that was really important for us because it was covered from so many different angles by people who were there. I think that one was the one in Overland, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember that became a trove for us to look at the way destruction is done on objects. So we would look at that and we'd figure out, what can we do with special effects, with real things in the foreground, and then what will our visual effects do in the background to make that look real. And we're just trying to marry that all together as a team. So in the end, it's teamwork, really.
Yeah, well, you had a great team. You all did a great job. I want to open it up to the floor now in case we have some questions in the audience, if we could. Okay.
Hi, not a science question, but a huge part of this film is defined by like the chemistry between the two leads. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a kiss scene that was cut from the ending of the movie. I was wondering what the reason was for like not having that in, for leaving that part of the relationship out of the film.
Isaac, that one's got to be for you. I think I heard something about Spielberg gave some notes, but you did have a kissing scene that was shot?
Yeah, somebody said that Spielberg was the reason, but that was not true. Spielberg wanted the kiss, and I wanted the kiss.
Oh.
We shot it. Spielberg wanted the kiss too. He's like, I hope this works. And we tested it, and we tested the film, and we were just finding that it was super polarizing to have the kiss in there. Yeah, that's really what happened. It was really based on the test audiences that we were seeing. Once we change to this ending where we leave it a little bit more open, we leave it up for the imagination to fill in what happens to these two. It really helped our how people were responding to the film. And normally I want to say, don't be a coward and you don't have to give the people what they want. But this one was a tough one. We had to get, there was a giant team involved, the studios, everybody, and there were quite a lot of people who were doubtful about whether there should be a kiss in this movie. And I think that ultimately swayed everybody to say, okay, let's go with this other ending. So this other ending was something that I shot because there was a lot of internal questioning about whether we should have a kiss or not. But it was not Spielberg. He's a romantic like I am. So
Well,
I'm sorry for the people who want the kiss.
It's kind of a science question because chemistry, right? So it's still there. I think we have time maybe for one more question here from the audience. Okay.
I guess this is maybe for everyone, but the National Weather Services right now was cut their like staffing by 10%, and they've been ordered to cut their staffing by another 30-40% in the next like couple of months. So one of the questions was how do you see this like playing out in terms of science research, especially in areas where kind of lives matter? And another question is the rise of YouTube, and you guys say you guys research some stuff on YouTube, but like YouTube scientists, how do you see them playing a role in terms of like our like scientific curiosity and our future in that way?
I think because, first of all, you're asking about the National Weather Service. Maybe, Kevin, this would be something for you. He's talking about cuts to the National Weather Service, if you can speak to that.
So my career was with NOAA, but with the research side of NOAA. So the Weather Service was our primary customer. I didn't actually work for the Weather Service, but I did a lot of technology transfer to the Weather Service, radars and radar data and all kinds of things like that. So they were our partners in all this. I haven't heard those rumors. I visit with folks on a regular basis, and they are all concerned. But you need to maintain a 24/7 staff at the Weather Service forecast office. You can't just work 9 to 5. So I would find that very difficult for them to implement. And one thing about Weather Service offices is there are many of them in every single state. That means every single congressional district has a Weather Service office. So it's going to be hard to push on that, because how would the congressional folks come back to their constituents and explain why some disaster happened and it wasn't well forecast or something? So I would find that would be very difficult to make those types of cuts, and the amount of money that would be saved it's not even a blip on a radar screen what they're trying to do. So let's hope that doesn't happen. But the research side, I haven't heard too many rumors about that. But I think it would be more likely to cut some research on the research side and have less impact to the public, immediate impact, than to try to cut the Weather Service, would be my guess.
And the other part of that question was about YouTube scientists, I think. Anyone? Greg?
Sure. I mean, in our work, identifying and classifying all the tornadoes in Canada and the National Weather Service is identifying the tornadoes in the U.S., we use social media a lot to identify tornado occurrence. We reach out to people that have posted to get details, and we use that as a basis for starting to identify the damage. So we're trying to capture, at least in our work, all the damage that occurs for every tornado in the country. And so social media is a very important part for that. In our program, we even have super contributors, and we send them a hoodie and a ball cap, for people who can share information for us that is useful. So it's a really important part of what we do.
And with that, I think that we have to wrap it up. And I want to thank our stellar panelists here, Isaac, Kevin, Greg. Thank you so much for joining us. To our wonderful audience, thank you all for sharing your time with us and hopefully inspiring some future, scientific storytelling out there. And also, we really want to give a heartfelt thank you to our sponsor, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, who makes this possible and supports the arts and science and that marriage together. So have a great evening, and thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah.